If you, I think it's absolutely okay for you to be able to kill someone if you're sitting right across from them and they tell you, "My favorite song is Umbrella by Rihanna." Like that. That is absolutely
Elaborate.
worth the struggle. Because it is objectively like that's like your favorite taste in the world being vanilla. That's like your favorite color being of like interior decoration just being white. It's fine. It's not bad necessarily, but come on, really.
Look, when it comes to the tastes of like when it comes to the bell curve of tastes, I think some people need to fall in the middle. Otherwise, it would just be like between you and I, the shit we listen to is unhinged. I blast Molchadama and I listen to. Like I listen to weird shit otherwise, right? It's either obscure leftist music, stuff that I can't listen to in public. It might get me killed. Yeah. Between your Yugo nostalgia and my like Russian post-punk, some people need to be in there with I don't fucking know. Who's the guy who sang Sunflower in the Spider-Man movie?
What? I have no idea.
The white guy, the dirty white guy. What's his name?
Oh, that really narrows it down. The dirty white man. Oh, Lord. Is it me? I mean,
Post Malone, that's his name.
Post Malone. Oh, okay. He now lost weight or some shit. And I love how, kids don't drink, but like this dude like did so much hard fucking drugs, right? And then, he stopped doing the hard drugs and drinking, which good for him.
Good for
and
him.
everybody's like, man, you see when you stop drinking how good you can look. I'm like, dude, he's not doing meth as well. Why are we concentrating on the beer? Why are we concentrating on the beer? But okay.
Concentrated alcohol drinker cope. This is what you're hearing.
Exactly, that's what I'm going at. But what I wanted to talk about, me and Hakeem were talking about what we're gonna eat after the podcast, and I remember, when special forces of different countries are trained, one aspect of their training includes calorie deficient action, meaning, they starve you for a day or two, and then you're given the same mission that you had finished in training a week ago when you were fully fed. And then, they give you the same mission while you're carrying like extra 20, 30 kilos, blah, blah, blah. But the calorie deficient thing, I think me and you, Hakeem, and probably JT can call ourselves the special forces of podcasts, because I don't know about you, but I go on this thing hungry like 90% of the time. Literally craving food.
I haven't even had lunch today.
There you go. Yeah, I only had breakfast, I think. I'm trying to do the weird fast. I know you're going to call that the real fast. The, not eating for 16 hours. It's good. I feel really good. I feel really good. But
dude, you don't get the brain fog. Intermittent fasting is great, man. There's the dichotomy, right? Like for old age, you want to have as much muscle mass as you can on you. It's one of the top predictors for quality of life as an elderly person. At the same time, though, for longevity's sake, you should be on a caloric restriction diet. The thing is that in order to build a lot of muscle, you need to be in at least a slight caloric surplus along with your regular workouts. So it's like you have to hit that medium that you're happy with and comfortable with, where you eat enough to have enough muscle on you on your build, but also you don't go way overboard that you defeat the caloric restriction. And inverse, you don't go too down in the caloric restriction, so you end up being just like a stick thin person that when you live until you're 98, cool, but you can't get off the toilet seat because you have absolutely no power left in your thighs, for example. There's a longevity conversation, but fuck the longevity conversation. I was gonna ask you something much more important.
Which is?
First thing you said is like, oh, me and Hakeem were thinking what to go eat later. That made it sound as if we're in the same place and we'd go out after the podcast. Fuck, I would love that. You have no idea.
Man, don't give me dreams and hopes,
bro. I know.
Lord, I prefer the doomer lifestyle, which is basically everything is going well in my life except that I don't get to see Hakeem and JT, like literally.
Honestly.
Knock on wood. Now the big man upstairs is like, everything is going well. Let me give you a few testers.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah al kull hal. All right, we praise God for all conditions.
Absolutely,
thank God for
and
everything.
absolutely not saying, but like I am very what's the word? Very
Balkan cynical.
I'm very wary. Man, English, fucking incredible language.
Yeah, I know.
I'm very wary of ever saying, ever not being cynical, as you said, ever saying, "Oh man, things are really good," because that's what we. There's a literal saying in my part of the world, which is, if you brag too much, the guy upstairs will remind you just how modest you can be, So, that's arguably my biggest fear of like, whenever something is really good, I'm standing there like, and I'm looking around like waiting for a truck to hit me or something, because I'm like, shit, things are too good. Something is about to go bad. Things cannot be this good,
It's all right. It keeps you grounded, keeps you humble, keeps you looking forward to the future. I was going to say, though, the thing that I want to ask you, how does all right, yesterday in the evening, it was like this was like 11 o'clock, and I was like, you know what, I feel like lamb. All right. And your boy got up basically got out of bed to go and basically start shuffling, getting everything ready, getting the what's it called, the pot ready and pans and everything, the seasoning, got everything. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, now let me go get the meat out of the freezer. And I go look in the freezer, and there's no fucking lamb meat. So I got up, got my fucking hopes up, got everything prepped, thinking of some succulent, juicy, like square pieces. And then afterwards I find I'm like, fuck it, all right, yeah, you know what, I have turkey. I have minced turkey. That's not gonna.
But you actually eat turkey. That is, I guess that's a cultural thing.
The mince.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever in my life bought turkey. Like not even once. That's interesting. I just eat chicken, When I want like chicken, I just eat chicken. Why kill that majestic, disgusting looking but funny sounding thing when you can just R.I.P. a dumbass fucking chicken. Mass respect to vegans, vegetarians, etc., like cows, pigs, extremely smart, extremely cute, blah blah blah. But chickens, really, you would like lay on the ground, potentially get run over by a truck for a chicken? I don't know. I mean, they're nice until I mean, for anybody who grew up relatively close to a farm or on a farm, chickens when you are small and they know they can peck your fucking face out are the most terrifying fucking creatures ever, especially with that like semi-dead look that they give you. It's like we literally designed these little poor souls so that they're like dumb enough for us not to care about them, so that we don't feel bad about RIPing them,
There's a deeper conversation here about animal rights, but I'm too tired to have it. Regardless from all this discussion, you guys can derive two things. Number one, we're both very hungry, and number two, you probably noticed a beautiful American voice isn't around, and that's because our beautiful baby boy JT is in Palestine. Sadly, not the good Palestine, but Palestine, Ohio. What the fuck? he's leading the revolution. No, he has something in the works. Maybe he'll bleep this. I don't know. Maybe it's censored. If it is, then keep all this part, but bleep the important parts so people can, die in their curiosity. Seethe in curiosity.
He was the one that made the train derail.
Exactly.
Accelerationism, begin. We shall use biochemical toxins to poison half of America, which will bring the economy down to a never before seen catastrophe, which will radicalize everyone. Blah blah blah. Oh Lord, get alive.
I've been getting JT keeps DMing me Ted Kaczynski stuff, the Unabomber stuff. I don't know. He keeps telling me that the Industrial Revolution and its consequences have been a catastrophe for the human race. I don't know. I don't know what to do.
He's been constantly sending me like, man, is this grenade cool? Oh man, do you think this could bring down a 4-story block or not?
Oh my god. He's sending me coordinates. He was like, here are all the police stations in my area. Can you please verify the addresses? I was like, all right.
He's sure, like, JT, what kind of 911 call do I need to get so that more than 10 police officers arrive at one particular spot, for example, like a parking spot?
Happy we're going to get it. We're going to get him. He's going to get arrested or some shit. We're going to get him in trouble. Enough.
All of this in Minecraft. I love how people think that actually works, or those stupid ass like financial advisors that tell you this is not financial advice.
Yeah, legal
like you do not have to say this. Like fuck. What the...
Dude,
imagine if somebody probably sued. Somebody probably sued a TikToker because he lost all his money because he invested in like this or that crypto because the TikToker was like, man, I think this might be a good idea to invest. Motherfucker invests and afterwards sues a fucking probably 19-year-old that uses like AI voice modifier to sound older whenever they pitch like niche cryptos to people. Sorry, you were saying something.
No, I was just gonna say my favorite thing is the military briefings I saw on two things. Number one, the Area 51 briefing, which talked about the Naruto run, and there was a depiction on the screen. And somebody took a picture of the PowerPoint. That's number one. Number two, where there was some American military publication of some sort as well, and in the footnote it was like, this idea of writing in Minecraft, and in the footnote they were describing what Minecraft was and how using the in Minecraft is supposed to be like, like cover up the fact that you want. I just really imagine a boomer there looking. I was like, what the fuck does this mean?
Absolutely. No, give shit to Americans as much as you want, but I genuinely think maybe it's a bit of a waste of resource. But then again, the U.S. military has more resource than my entire part of the world combined, in general. But like they have plans for absolutely everything. Like a zombie apocalypse, massive like flooding. I think they even had plans in case the biblical apocalypse begins. Like what we need to do with the U.S. president, etc., etc. Probably a bunch of
know it's because he's not going to get raptured. He's going to stay here on Earth. To be fucking... That's why
rule over the rest of the fucking Lord. But
that's them low-key admitting that they are the Antichrist. Speaking of which, I hate the Antichrist.
Oh no, the Antichrist. No, what are you gonna eat later? I am thinking moussaka. Actually, I'm thinking a nice little moussaka with yogurt on top. Oh yeah, baby. And then some eggs on like melted in. Oh, okay. I know what I'm gonna eat.
Habibi. I am genuinely thinking of an incredibly basic pasta. That's what I'm feeling like.
What is basic for you? Are you more of a tomato sauce or a cream guy?
I'm a tomato sauce guy. I'm a tomato sauce. I like mincemeat.
My girlfriend. Oh God. Yeah, it's nice, but the creamy, unhealthy.
No, cream is good. No, the cream is good. I'm not. No. I like gnocchi with cream-based sauces, but the rest of the pastas I like them with tomato base. So I'm gonna make a bolognese sort of thing, possibly a quick one. I'm not gonna sit there for 4 hours over a pot.
No. Making the actual sauce. I think I made the actual like tomato sauce like maybe 5 times in my life. There's very good ones that you can buy off the counter, probably filled with like 7,000 microplastics and fucking teeth of pigs.
Let's go. I'm 12% Funko Pop.
Which, by the way, for the listeners, I guess I'm pushing it a bit, but do we know for sure now what like the main sources of microplastics are that end up going into our body, which is obviously very fucking bad for you? Do we know, or is it like it's from so many things that the list would be too long to list. The list would be too long to list. I'm a professional podcaster, everyone. Know my way with words, eh? But yeah, do we know? Is it like from food packaging that is plastic? Your milk is in a plastic bottle. Yeah. You're drinking the soda from the plastic bottle. Is it mostly that, or is just there are microplastics in the fucking air and shit because everybody's burning that shit all over the place? Blah blah blah.
Or in the water where it gets broken down, like in the oceans, broken down to finer, like microparticles, and then it goes into like river systems, then to fresh water, and then maybe possibly some like roundabout way like this. Who knows? More importantly, read Lenin and let's bring the system down.
Absolutely. Lenin had a lot of things to say about microplastics. He was
exactly.
He was like when capitalism in crisis, like it begins with like imperialism or whatever, but it can get much worse. Microplastics in foods, making you not be able to have babies.
Lenin said, "People may be full of microplastics, but the Romanovs need to be full of lead." There we go. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Deprogram. Be lucky, be happy that you didn't hear the very incredibly bleep-worthy shit that came after that last comment from You Go Up Thinking I. Anyways, unhinged intro aside, today we're going to be doing a sort of part 2 to the liberalism series. Last time we spoke about liberalism in general, like foundations of the ideology and how it's basically nonsense, and it's really the only episode you need to listen to get the punch against somebody, or like to learn the things that you need to basically understand when talking with people about liberalism. All the rest is just for the fun of it, specifically this episode. Before I get into it, though, I'd really like to thank our patrons, without which we couldn't do any of this. So we're very thankful for all the support, particularly our Habib tier patrons. And of course, we'd like to thank all the people who interact with us on the Discord and whatnot, and keep it a fun and joyful environment.
And relatively civil.
Yeah, that's again, you mentioned this before, but it's surprisingly civil. Like, we don't have both. Yeah, it's one of the most refreshing fucking. And
it's not even sectarian. You have like very radically different like subsections of Marxists that like get along pretty decently. It's very surprising. Sorry, please continue.
Look, the homoeroticism between us it's the gel that keeps all the sectarian tensions below.
That's what the Bolsheviks missed. That's why
exactly
Huge fell apart.
If Stalin spread out his lip to lip smooches more often, the socialist fraternal kisses equally distributed, it wouldn't have fallen apart. Anyways, stuff for
just a comrade a day. Oh.
Yeah, exactly.
And all the problems go away. Oh, I can see it on the poster, bro.
Let's go. Oh fuck. Anyways,
so comrades, he comes out on the like red square, and all the soldiers, the general says to the left, to the right, and all of the Red Army soldiers like, have exactly one comrade in front of them, and then Stalin just slaps his hands like above his head like an anime character, and the whole army just kisses.
Oh man, beautiful! Oh, this is the future that what's it called? Shit people doesn't want.
Exactly.
Anyways,
gay armed communists, unironically.
The only person Ben wants to kiss is his sister, seemingly. All right. So the general breakdown, very unhinged. The general breakdown of this series was, as mentioned, the foundations of liberalism, which is the first episode. Today's episode, which will be historical liberalism and hypocrisy. So this is basically kind of in the vein of a bonus episode, just for fun. The core theory bits really make up the other parts. The third part, which will be liberal state, with talking about separation of powers, parliamentarianism, private property capitalism, the pervasive cultural ideology, the civic state religion aspect, all that nonsense. And then finally, the last part will be liberalism and revolution, which will be just a discussion of our good old boy Lenin, amongst other things. And finally, I'll give just the recommendation, because last time I forgot to. Anybody who's interested in reading and getting the perfect deep dive into liberalism from a Marxist perspective should check out Lacerdo's book, Liberalism: A Counterhistory. And this series entirely is kind of loosely based on that book. With all that said, kind of a lengthier intro, but there's a lot of shit talking coming. Don't you worry. A quick recap before we do that. The material conditions of local European urban center class struggle throughout the 14, 15, and 1600s gave rise to the philosophical presuppositions of liberalism, as they were in the interest of this new developing class at the time, the bourgeoisie. And that's kind of the crux of the matter when it comes to liberalism. The nonsense that they like to basically enumerate, the list is pro-individual liberty, anti-concentration of power or pro-plurality, constitutionalism, pro-minority rights, and not the kind of minorities you're thinking of. They mean specifically landowning elite. Sanctification of private property, particularly, the questions for whom, and of course, white, male, landowning, usually, historically, and for the vast majority still today, and of course, markets and capitalism. That is the general overview of liberalism. Do note that it highlights anti-concentration of power, like we're against authoritarianism or authority, we're pro-individual liberty, this, that. But they are hypocrites in that this was only ever applied to themselves and not to others, and we'll get into this. So let's just go into a taste of the foundational hypocrisy of liberalism, and the inherent contradictions of liberalism historically. Many of the proponents, we're going to start naming names in a bit, they're liberals, of course, through and through, and they they truly believe in the nonsense that I mentioned above, but they firmly also supported, somehow without any conflict in their mind, or maybe possibly, we'll get into that, they firmly supported slavery, particularly out of economic principles, because they can use it to increase primitive accumulation in parts, they can use it to increase their own wealth, through basically a form of extraction, of the surplus extraction. But the difference is that slaves only produce surplus. Nothing that they produce is from themselves most of the time. They justified all this through
they got meals and they got like a free house, bro.
Oh yes, yeah, no, and they got whipped for free as many times as they want.
They were introduced to monotheistic religion. They were not taught to read. Why the fuck? Some of them were taught to read because they had to upkeep the house and shit. So Lord. Teach the kids how to play piano.
It's like, they were introduced to monotheistic religions. The vast majority of these people, these slaves, had some sort of monotheistic background. A lot of them were Muslims, especially the ones that went to Brazil, and partly the ones who went to the U.S. The first Islamic religious writings of America were written by black slaves in the U.S. Not only this, but a lot of people who practice some form of animism, or other quote-unquote pagan beliefs, in one form or another believed in some unifying deity. It gets very complicated, but this is also one of those misconceptions used by people of the era to try to justify their supposed superiority. It's just a lot of racism, and this was the point. Back then, it was scientific racism, which basically claimed that all other races are inferior to whites. Some of them are not even human, actually, so they're exploitable, just like cattle would. Just like how you'd view a ox, for example, tilling the land, a black guy would till the land, and this is the same connection in their mind, these absolute human filth. And the important point, and this is I'm going to hand off to Yugovnik to develop, is even science can be bludgeoned by the ideology.
The ideology, absolutely. No, it's what's fascinating and what pervades in liberalism up to today is this necessity for them to explain away to themselves the internal gut-wrenching feeling and knowledge that they are participating in an extremely exploitative system. Back then, for example, as Hakim put, in order for you to use a slave, you're explaining them away as, subhuman, as literally too stupid, as literally too, mentally not up there, etc., etc., in order for you to identify more with an animal than with a human. But even in modern so-called neoliberal liberal capitalism, we have the same need to explain away why, for example, the owner of a particular business gets to make so much while everybody working in that particular business has to live with the scraps, sometimes bigger, sometimes smaller scraps. And they usually explain it away in, not as insane of an argument like skull measuring, but they say, but this person, in order for them to have become the owner, they must be necessarily more wiser and more intelligent than the masses. That's why they got to where they are. Or they say this person took a lot more risk, therefore they deserve a bigger reward as compared to the masses. Or, can you imagine being in such a position with so much authority and so much work? We probably couldn't manage it. That's why he deserves, or she, to be in that particular position that they are in. It's not skull measuring, but to an extent it is the same ideological necessity for them to explain away that previously mentioned gut feeling deep down inside of them that something is fucking wrong, something is fucking weird. Never for a million, of course us as Marxists should not concentrate on individualist blaming of person A, B, C, or D, but never for a second think that most large capital owners don't at one point realize, bro, I am making most of my money because these motherfuckers are working their ass off. But really, which one of them wants to call themselves a bad person? So they do the typical liberal approach. Back in the day, they would have been like, oh man, this feels bad. I have like 500 slaves. But no, man, look at their skull shape. That means they're gorillas, so they get to be in this position that they are in. But now he again explains it to himself, either by tapping himself on the back and acknowledging his superiority because, oh, we're all playing the same game of capitalism and I got here while you didn't. Haha, good for me, bad for you. Or they explain it the way that they are taking the bigger risk, everything that I mentioned before. But the necessity, the ideological necessity for a liberal to explain away the horrors which he or she or they inflict on not only people but the environment as well, is very pervasive from the invention of liberalism up to an extent today. And I think it's a very interesting thing to notice and to talk about, because they're not robots. That's the only thing I'll finish with. They know, most of them deep down know how fucked up they are. But as compared to a conservative or a fascist, unironically, a fascist says this is fucked up. That is why the top dog deserves to be the top dog, because he steps over everybody, because he's stronger. He bites harder. Well, the liberal doesn't have, unironically, I'm going to say this, doesn't have the courage of the fascist to acknowledge where basically hierarchy comes from. So they invent their little flowery sciences to explain it away. Sorry for the rant.
No. I would only say one correction. I wouldn't use courage. I would use more blatant want of transparency. Like the liberal thinks it, the fascist says it. I think it's more in that way. Yeah. But everything else I completely agree with. And I actually want to lead into this point of justification. Thank you for that. Montesquieu, who is basically, he's the guy who came up with the concept of separate powers within a state. We're going to cover this, of course, in the next episode in the series. As well as he was basically the spiritual inspiration for the Founding Fathers. He formulated this fantastic truth of nature, and I'll quote it to you. One must not be surprised that the cowardice of the peoples of hot climates has almost always made them slaves, and that the courage of the peoples of cold climates has kept them free. This is an effect that derives from its natural cause. What else could you expect from somebody French? Bleep French, please. This is a very, very typical presentation, of course. He formulated a perspective or opinion based on economic relations, right? Material benefit that he would derive himself. And then afterwards try to create some bullshit justification, be it social, be it scientific, be it philosophical, or all of the above. And this is kind of the very impotent explanations that they end up giving. But let's look deeper. Let's look at I dare say, like a foundational liberal document. It's incredibly famous. It's called the Fundamental Constitution of Carolina. It was published in 1669, and it was authored by Locke, who is basically like the Marx of... That's a huge insult to Marx. That's the Marx of liberals, basically. He was but he's a fairly substantial figure in liberal theory, if it even exists. Next to Harry Potter. Liberal theory next to Harry Potter.
You could call him a wise man for his time. Now, the direction that liberalism went in afterwards is obviously very different. But
exactly.
John Locke as a philosopher, not that bad. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, he wasn't Anglo. We have to keep that in mind. He was an Anglo,
difficult.
So big L there.
Yeah.
I'm teasing, of course.
Like Locke is like when you talk to most people who studied political science, most of them are going to tell one of my favorite philosophers is Locke, which makes me want to lock him in a room and do things to them. Like how out of all of, because in political science you have to study so many different philosophers, and you pick again the vanillaest, the umbrella Ella of ideology. I'm sorry, continue. But
I mean, it has to. They have to. They have to have a quote unquote socially acceptable opinion, because they can't tell you Goebbels or something, even though he was
exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
It's socially acceptable.
Let me quote the Fundamental Constitution of Carolina. Locke writes, "Every free man of Carolina shall have absolute power and authority over his Negro slaves. This is the guy that some people are like, yeah, this is my favorite.
I don't.
By the way, Locke, he owned stock in the Royal African Company, which ran the African slave trade for England. So again, he has a material benefit that he derives, and then he creates philosophical justifications. Other liberals of the era, Fletcher and Burke and Hutchinson, etc., they disagreed on the slavery point to differing extents, basically. Some of them saying, either expanding it or limiting it to lumpen elements for society or for penal purposes, but very rarely did they call for abolition. This is a very important point. Most of the time, they just want to, quote unquote, regulate slavery. No, but very few of these liberals, particularly earlier liberals, wanted to abolish it. And this is interesting because Adam Smith, yes, that Adam Smith, he wrote something very interesting. Basically to the tune of slavery could be more easily abolished under a quote-unquote despotic government than a free, meaning like liberal government, because the representative bodies of quote-unquote free government are exclusively reserved in practice for what was at the time white property owners. And I'm going to quote Smith now. What he says is, every law is made by their masters, who will never pass anything prejudicial to themselves. The freedom of the free was the cause of the greatest oppression of the slaves, and as they are the most numerous part of mankind, no human person will wish for liberty in a country where this institution is established. Basically saying nobody's going to want liberalism because all the liberals basically impose the harshest form of slavery on their countries or the areas that they live in.
The biggest cliche quote, I guess, that comes from liberals, do unto others what you would wish them to do unto you, or even more, the even bigger liberal twist is, don't do anything to someone else that you wouldn't want them to do to you, and yet the whole fucking system is based on you advancing through hierarchy. Is basically you getting to do more stuff to other people instead of them doing it to you. It is not eliminating oppression of one over the other. Is you getting to be the oppressor, be it relation slave owner and slave, or employee and employer.
Exactly right. Yeah. Interestingly, employee-employer, I was going to lead into anti-slavery personalities, so there's a thread there, but every anti-slavery personality, or basically, majority of them, like Mill, for example, were partial to slavery-like practice, particularly abroad. So in one country, for example, they'll be like, like in France or the UK or in America, they're going to be like, yeah, we don't want slavery, but when it comes to the colonies, and I'll quote Lacerda for this, when he turned his attention to the colonies, the English liberal, meaning Mill, justified the West's despotism over races, quote unquote, that were still underage, quote unquote, and we were obliged to observe an absolute obedience in order to be set on the path of progress. According to Montesquieu again, he basically viewed England and America as the freest countries, the freest land on earth, and as a result of this,
so that changed.
Lamau, as if they ever were Lamau. And as a result of this, of course, there is a complex relationship with ideas of, for example, constitutional republic versus foreign monarchies, etc., etc. We're all Marxists here, okay? We understand the fundamental difference. I'm just memeing about the fact that like England and America were never progressive. These are memes for I'm speaking to the liberals on the walls. I don't know why the fuck I bother. So Montesquieu, he thought that England and America were the freest basically on earth, and as a result, he thought even in their relationship with their colonies or with the colonies, what characterized England was its quote-unquote love of liberty. And I'll quote him: "If this nation sent colonies abroad, it would be so to extend its commerce more than its domination. As one likes to establish elsewhere what is established at home, it would give the form of its government to the people of its colonies, and as the government would carry prosperity with it, one would see the formation of great peoples, even the forests of which it had sent inhabitants." Yeah. A philosophical justification of, like previously mentioned, economic or political imperialism. And these are positions, by the way, you hear to this day. They're only, they're delivered in more sanitized language. If you remember that European politician who was like, oh, we're the garden and the rest of the world is the jungle and Europe is like the garden. This is fucking nonsense.
it's funny how the garden is directly all the water it gets is siphoned out of this horrible jungle. The jungle can survive without the garden, but the garden cannot survive without the jungle. Which by the way, they always try to spin the other way, but my friends.
He was trying to if you read the fine print actually of what that politician was saying, he referred to the jungle as strictly Romania, not the rest of the world.
Yeah, that's my Slavic brothers and Eastern Europeans, including Romanians and Albanians and Greeks. It's very funny to me when they're bigoted towards what we had an episode talking about Orientalism, what they consider the Orient or whatever. But my friends, 60% of why Brexit happened is not because they got tired of the Pakis and the Indians and the this and the that. They're fucking used to them at this point. They've been because of the Commonwealth. No, they don't want more Romanians, Bulgarians, and Croats in the fucking UK. That's why they cut it. You are more in the same boat with the fellow Malaysian, Vietnamese, Indian, Iraqi comrade than you ever will be in the eyes of the Westerner close to their so-called civilizational project. Sorry for the little side rant.
No, it's perfectly fine. But I love how you took something that I said just basically kind of as a bad joke, and you actually took it seriously. I love that. But I just want to take a dig at Romania.
Because it's true. In European Union opinions on Eastern Europeans, they're literally they're
horrible,
barbaric fucking monkeys that just are massacring each other. Bro, we never had a 30-year war, motherfucker. We never created rooms in which you go in and gas comes out. You tell the motherfuckers they're showering, and all of a sudden fucking gas comes out while they're holding their fucking kids. Us barbaric, bro. We can't hold a fucking candle to you fucking cunts. Sorry.
It's okay. No, I completely agree. And by the way, just ask them. They're like, oh, barbarians. Oh, they're just coming here to do this. Then ask them, who built your home? Who are the people who are doing maintenance on the roads and everything? It's always going to be a Pole, a Romanian, a Moldovan, somebody from the Balkans. Oh my God. Anyways, European hypocrisy aside, let's talk about our favorite hypocrites, the liberal American revolutionaries, if you even want to call them that, who fought in the cause of liberty, of course, against taxes of all things. They were the greatest supporters of slavery, and I think this is very clear beyond doubt. But when you tell Americans this, especially the more liberal kinds, they won't actually believe you. They'll give you pushback on this. Funnily enough, this was noted even by critics of the era of the American founding fathers. Let's quote a few of these critics. You Americans make a great clamor upon every little imaginary infringement of what you take to be your liberties, and yet there are no people upon earth such enemies to liberty, such absolute tyrants where you have the opportunity as you yourselves are, meaning implying their oppression of the natives and the slaves. Samuel Johnson, he rhetorically asked that we hear the loudest yelps for liberty from the drivers of Negroes, with a big exclamation mark. Thomas Hutchinson, who was, I think at the time, the royal governor of Massachusetts, he rebuked the rebels themselves for their inconsistency and hypocrisy, and he said, they denied Africans those rights that they claimed to be absolutely inalienable in the most radical way possible, or radical way imaginable, excuse me. Jonathan Boucher, I don't know exactly how his name is pronounced, who was an American loyalist, he said that, or observed that, the most clamorous advocates for liberty were uniformly the harshest and worst masters of slaves. In turn, of course, the American liberties replied things to the effect of, but who continues the slave trade? I'm the Chad and you're the soy Wojak. Who benefits the most financially?
I will draw you right now.
Yeah, exactly. But they said this stuff in reference to England, and this was also equally valid criticism because, to give some numbers, in the 1830s, nearly the entirety of tobacco, cotton, sugar, and coffee for English consumption was produced by slaves, and a large amount of the political structure of England had stakes in slave production. So not only were consumer products being produced by slaves, many of the people who basically got wealthy off of basically slave purchasing, selling, and trade. So it's the pot calling the kettle black in the situation. Both were very wrong, but the criticism of supposed liberals still stands. These people were like, "Oh, these are unalienable rights, but not for the blacks." Okay, and not the Indians either, and not the Native Americans. Excuse me. I think the point becomes very patently clear that liberal presuppositions, particularly philosophically, were nothing but thin justifications for expansion of property rights, property ownership particularly, and usually for that same property owning class. I'm gonna give a bit of a historical context just to drive this point home. The British Crown proclaimed in 1763 that there should be no expansion no expansion should occur to the west of the Allegheny mountain range. I don't know if I pronounce it right, but it's basically a mountain range in the U.S., which is in today's Pennsylvania, Maryland, West Virginia, and Virginia. I didn't know where any of these states were, by the way, so I had to actually look up the fucking... I know Virginia somewhere in the east, but I don't care for American geography. I'm sorry. You guys are going to balkanize it eventually, and it'll become a barren wasteland, so I don't need to learn. But that aside... Let's quote George Washington, an ugly motherfucker, by the way. Those who neglect the present opportunity of hunting out good lands in the West were foolish. In official speeches, he said he wanted to bring the blessings of civilization, that's a direct quote, blessings of civilization and happiness to an unenlightened race of men. This was public, while in private correspondence, he called Native Americans savages and wild beasts of the forest.
That's kind of based wild beasts of the forest. Don't know if that's biggest tree or that's like, man, you're a fucking beast, bro.
Sadly, he didn't mean it in any sort of like, you know, bro. I know you know. Yeah. But liberals in the walls.
Thank you for protecting me, my brother.
I love you. But yeah, the reason he said this is because he wanted to enslave them, murder them, and do unspeakable things to their women. Franklin, who was another resident, or is another resident of the Hellfire, inshallah, he said, if it be the design of Providence, astaghfirullah, he's bringing in God's name, this piece of shit. If it be the design of Providence to extirpate these savages in order to make room for cultivators of the earth, it seems not improbable that rum may be the appointed means. It has already annihilated all tribes who formerly inhabited the seacoast. And this shit is so thoroughly fucking disgusting. If you're unaware, by the way, historically in Native American societies, they didn't have a drinking culture, really. Mm-hmm. The vast majority of them developed, at best, weak beers, or what would be in Europe considered to be weak beers, and they were usually used only in ceremonial purposes, like certain religious or other ceremonial stuff. It wasn't like a thing that you drink to get intoxicated and all the subsequent effects. But the colonizers, these white settlers, literal devils, they noticed that they could basically flood these areas, the Native American lands. Yeah, and get them hooked on alcohol. They're the only ones who can get alcohol. So basically, you make addicts of a population. You become the only the distributor and provider. And this is something that the American government basically has continued into.
Yeah, I wonder if they do that today.
Yeah, it's inner city black communities, inner city quote unquote, and all the other euphemisms they use for just saying, oh yeah, we want to keep the blacks on addicted to essentially opium. To this day, by the way, and this is grotesque, to this day, Native American populations continue to suffer from issues related to alcoholism. This has been and basically been American government policy maintaining this trend into the 20th century, and there's even evidence of it continuing to this day. So imagine for almost 400, 500 years, this has been basically common policy. It's beyond disgusting. And of course, the question on the liberal freedom seekers' minds wasn't should we enslave blacks and genocide Native Americans. It was how do we go about enslaving blacks and genociding Native Americans? And you see this in their private correspondence. You see this in some of their speeches. Even you see it over and over and over again. These are the same people who would wax daily, like fucking go on massive long rants talking about how liberal they are, how freedom loving they are, etc., etc.
Always looking for that particular excuse or finding the so-called liberal approach to warfare, to slavery, to destruction. Again, something that exists to this day. I mean, they don't just go to war because when did they ever, like, especially talking about Western liberals, go to war stating we are going because it is in our national interest, No, they have to find 7,000 different pitches for the 7,000 different liberal demographics they have in their country so that the Karens don't get up in arms, because we all know the George Bushes of this world are the most afraid of the Karens of this world.
Yes, exactly. I was going to say, I love that point particularly because the United States has taken part in over 130 military interventions around the world, right? But officially, if you look into the, how they break down their definition of war, at least like the official government definition, they would say we've either taken part in 8 wars or 0 technically, because they have an incredibly pedantic, like, Congress has to declare and has to be voted on and this, and you see again like this absolute nonsense. Where they absolve themselves of all their fucking hypocrisy, and then lie through their teeth, and then basically pretend in front of their own populations that no, the everything that we've done before was either justified, or it didn't happen really, or it didn't happen the way you think.
Yeah, they call it something else. Like everybody's making fun of the Russians for calling this a special operation, but like look up what Americans
what is collateral damage? Yeah,
I mean,
oh my god. Lacerdo, who wrote Liberalism and Counter History, raises an interesting point in the book. He mentions that the American revolutionaries, they were set on of course, the extermination of Native Americans, but they laid the blame at England's feet specifically. We have to exterminate the Native Americans because England, quote unquote, legitimized or otherwise empowered Native Americans because they drew treaties with them and recognized them. By the way, this is.
I love that. That's basically that's the Israel argument. You can't do anything to the Israelis because Lord, I love it.
So they're like, it's England's fault because they drew treaties with Native Americans. Apparently, it's unfitting. It's an unfitting thing to occur between civilized man and a savage, supposedly.
Wow, that went worse. Oh, sorry. I thought they were like, man, the English went to war with the Native Americans. Not the Native Americans hate us, so we gotta exterminate them because there's no peace because they hate us for what we've done to them. That would be a horrible argument, but like a very almost fascistic, relatively direct argument. But no, he went like full just
exactly. Don't worry, people will understand. But and if you're liberal, I don't. You know what? There's a prescription at the end of the series, but I'll leave it for then. Anyways,
doesn't include microplastics. Includes the other stuff we mentioned.
Exactly.
You see how I know where you're going. Oh Lord,
I love it. Yeah. And if anybody takes this out of context, fuck you. These are just jokes. Anyways, so yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's unfitting between civilized man and savage, supposedly. Jefferson, I want to say, and others in their private letters, they say some insanely genocidal shit. I'm not going to reproduce it here. I'm not going to mention them. But safe to say, it's basically indistinguishable from how Nazis spoke about all their undesirables. It's actually uncanny. And speaking of which, of course, the philosophical justification and way of carrying out all this genocide was the preliminary blueprint, of course, was provided by the English when they genocided the Irish. And this gave the blueprint for the American revolutionaries to basically do the same to the Native Americans. And they developed, and by the way, what the English were doing was like fucking, what is it called? I wish JT was here. When you have like a small kids league in a sport? You know what I'm talking about. That's what it's basically child's play. What the English were doing. The Americans became PhD fucking like specialists. They were the people in the field who the know-it-alls. They made it. They boiled it down into a fucking science.
Protecting your thesis on executing the Browns. So exactly, you have an A+.
Exactly. The Americans perfected the blueprint. They turned it into basically a formula you can follow. And guess what? The Nazis in turn used the American example in their own experiment. I believe there's even there's a good book on it, and I can't recall the title. I think it's Hitler's American Model, I think is the title of the book. But basically, everything we know and what the Nazis did was essentially copied 1-to-1 with massive admiration, by the way, for the Americans. From the Americans.
Very often Hitler would get criticized by party members who would say, sir, your plans are great, but they might be too wide spanning, meaning how are we going to take all of this territory and then we're going to cleanse the entire local population? You want to kill everyone in Eastern Europe? And then you want to take Germans and like build Germany there? Sir, that sounds batshit, and that is going to be very difficult
Manifest
to pull
destiny?
off. And Hitler is just like, America. But no, sir, exactly. It's like, no. They already did it. We can do it as well. Why shouldn't we be able to do it? If they've done it like across the pond, why shouldn't we? And that's like, I'm about to call Hitler rational, but like that, if it's rational, like if you see it over there, why not? Okay, the Native Americans here are a bit paler, but whatever the fuck.
Yeah, no, it's true. So the Nazis, they used the American example in their own experiments, And at every step, regardless of, by the way, of all these points, at every step, enslavement, let's sort of term the practical genocide, enslavement and economic gain were closely intertwined in this process. So I just want to remind you, isn't capitalism lovely? The market finds a solution. And at that point, the market found its solution. I don't know what to tell you. I'll end my section here, but there's generally so much more to say from a historical point of view on liberalism. I don't want this episode to drag on for 6 hours, but I'll just mention a few things. There's attitudes towards quote-unquote freed slaves, laws restricting miscegenation, so mixing, quote-unquote blood mixing, so basically a white and a black person, interracial relationships, etc., which, by the way, a woman would be like forced to, if not abort her child, then she would have to basically sell her child into slavery or be forcibly taken away if she's a white woman. If it's a black man, he'd be murdered. Like insane nonsense like this. If a free black man would sleep with a white woman, then he could be re-enslaved and his freedom can be retracted, which, by the way, doesn't that go against the entire point of being able to be freed? It's just such nonsense. But anyways,
sorry, there's no that is non sequitur or whatever they would call it, because there is no person who taps a pussy and is not enslaved. Oh
my god, such a fucking bro joke. All right,
bro, pass the bud, bro. Do you have a light? I want to have some weed, bro. Sorry,
That's
sorry.
So stupid. I know, I get it. It's perfectly fine.
Said no lie. Said no lie.
Oh my god, I get a feeling that Franklin was one of the basically this type of person. What a piece of shit. Fuck. Anyways, hey, look, he has been honored in this world by basically having every bit of filthy money, cocaine, drug money, fucking weapons, anything in this world has had to be exchanged with his face on the fucking note. So I'm sure he's having fun having to explain that to his lord. But anyways, so yeah, the of course the buying and selling of poor children for labor. This is a thing that happened and was completely sanctioned under quote unquote liberalism and liberal states. Indentured servitude, eugenics, social Darwinism, castes within so-called liberal democracies being like for example master race democracy and other concepts. At every turn it comes to back to one point, as the maintenance of property rights and the rights of extraction for those already propertied and usually holding all political, social and economic power within said liberal structures. So basically dictatorship of the bourgeoisie, something that Marx spoke about and Marx has been speaking about ever since. Dictatorship of the bourgeoisie through a hegemonic social and political philosophy intended solely to maintain their interests. And of course, to finish it all off with the final point, which you have to get fucking tattooed on the inside of your eyelid. All right. Fascism is capitalism decay. Liberalism is only the first, basically, human face wall of capitalist sheer barbarity. And when this fails, of course, behind every liberal is an internal fascist. When the liberal facade falls, then the black shirts and brown shirts emerge. All this could be basically like a 12-part series, which is what I told the guys. And they're like, no, you're not doing that. We're doing 3, maybe 4. And I'm like, all right.
Kind of liberal and a fascist bleeds, but kind of fascist and a liberal bleeds too.
Basically.
That's a twist on that old classic Parenti joke about who do they care about immediately after a revolution? Oh, what are you going to do with all the fascists? But,
civil liberties for the fascists. Do they have civil liberties for the fascists? Honestly, yeah. It's the first thing that fucking people say. That's finishing off a fairly heavy topic.
Okay, all this talk about liberalism has made me very, very hungry. I have a few of them in the basement, but they're usually very scrawny.
They're in my walls normally.
There's not a lot of meat on them, right? The ones who escape from my apartment, they go into Hakim's walls, right? We like nice, big, greasy pieces of meat over here in the balconies. We like our calories, and the lib doesn't really cut it. That's why I have a few conservatives that I use oil from to pad and to cook. Yeah. But they're very stinky. Like you need to like freeze it, and then you need to wash the meat. So you have pluses and minuses. Yeah, the only people who would arguably taste good are communists. But I following that classical liberal school, they are the only people I consider human. Their skull shapes are decent enough not to eat.
Exactly right.
They're like me. Everybody else gets to be shot. Which, funny enough, sorry that I'm going in circles, but funny enough, if you really follow through on the liberal school of thought of constantly othering the one who you want to oppress, it would be absolutely in line with liberal thought to believe in the Marxian genocide of all liberals in order to establish a Marxist state. Because
people are going to take you seriously.
No, of course. But if you other the liberal, if you use the liberal othering on liberals, and you other the liberal, it's still by their book. So if a liberal that really is like has the globe emoji and the socks on his Twitter handle, when he hears this argument of mine, he should eat some lead. I obviously don't encourage it, but I don't exactly discourage it either.
Oh my! Look, all my liberals are free range. Okay. They're let out for 15 minutes of the day to go and graze and read as much Harry Potter as they like before they have to go right back in the walls. I don't know what to tell you. These are all jokes.
We all were liberals at one point. So
exactly right.
As much as we piss and shit on them, a lot of them will eventually, thankfully, hopefully, become comrades. But what would you say is like an unreturnable age? Actually, a very interesting conversation. Like when do you think somebody like when is a person's ideology like fermented and unchangeable? You think never?
No, I don't think it's ever at any point somebody can stop being a liberal. I think there are people who have just basically been liberals and they put on like a red coat. And then they call themselves like communists, and then when they're like 62, they're like, no, I'm a social democrat now. Like Gorbachev. He was never a Marxist. He was never sincere. He was always a fucking liberal, even in his early period. But the inverse, I think, liberals can become actual genuine communists. I think there's some people who don't have that inbuilt predisposition. But of course, there's many intersections to why people feel the way they do, etc., etc. We've discussed this in other episodes. In fact, there's an episode on intersection that you guys should check out. But with all this said, I'd like to, of course, thank all our patrons again. Of course, they're the completely based because they understand that our memes are memes, and the stuff we mean is fairly clear otherwise. So don't go and eat anybody. But yeah, thank you to all the patrons. Thank you to all the Habibi tier people, especially.
I love how you had to say that. This is what he thinks of you, dear listeners. That you're going to hear Gopnik talk about like ethical cannibalism. It's ethical if you eat liberals. Like free-range cannibalism, and that you're going to go eat the motherfucker. Oh, I love you so much.
And I love you back. With all this said, this has been the Deprogram. I'm Hakim.
I'm your Gopnik. Please don't actually kill yourself, okay?